Yo, what's going on, people? It is your boy King Titan X here, back with another video, and let's just get on with it. Issei woke up in a sweat. He started feeling up his own body and even pinching himself just to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Sure enough, he wasn't. He was confused though. Everything that happened came off as too real to just be some sort of nightmare he had. He even remembered the pain he felt back there, and everything beginning to turn red. That metallic taste in his mouth, and the one he thought he could trust, who shot spears of light through him. He lost a lot of blood, so how was he alive now? When he talked to his friends at school, none of them seemed to remember Yuma. At first he thought they were just pulling his chain, but they genuinely didn't remember the girl. Everyone he asked didn't know what he was talking about, which put him in a bad mood for most of the day. It got so bad that others began to notice this sour attitude Issei was having today, which even concerned some of the people that feared Issei. They never saw Issei in such a state, and they weren't sure how he'd react if they approached him now. Nothing could cheer Issei up, but they figured he would feel better tomorrow. Issei walked home with his hands in his pockets. For some reason he felt as if he had more energy now. He didn't know why exactly, but it didn't make much of a difference for him. He felt a strange presence though. The lights began flickering and he felt a cold chill crawl up his back. What in the world is going on? Hey kid. Issei looked up to see a man wearing a gray trench coat and fedora standing in his path. You must be Issei Hyodo, he said. Yeah, what's it to you? I thought Reina already took care of you, but she did mention that you were releasing a huge amount of power, even after getting stamped multiple times. It was quite strange to see, frankly, so she mentioned there was a chance you were somehow still alive. Guess I have to finish the job then. Black wings spread from the man's back and he flew up into the sky. Not only that either, but a light spear began to form in the man's hands. Issei knew exactly what they were going to do, and he didn't run this time. He felt a surge of energy, and his hair, unknowingly to him, began to glow. This caught Donasik off guard, but he still threw the light spear at Issei, except the boy managed to dodge his attack. He was slightly impressed, although he hated to admit it. Donasik went and tried to shoot more spears at Issei, but he continued to dodge most of them. One managed to hit him in the shoulder. He gritted his teeth in pain, but he refused to go down. Not to some overcooked turkey, especially. He started charging towards Donasik, which surprised the fallen angel even more. Why wouldn't this kid just die already? Issei began to sprout two horns around the sides of his head. His eyes glowed a menacing blood red, much more menacing than his usual eyes. Two bat-like wings appeared from his back, and he also formed some white armor around his legs and wrists. He flew at the older man and sucker punched him. Donasik stabbed Issei in the gut with a light spear, but the boy grabbed it and pulled it out of himself, shocking Donasik. The light burned his hand, but he pushed forward and stabbed Donasik in the chest with his own attack. He screamed in pain, but Issei grabbed his mouth, muffling the noise he was making. Issei smiled wickedly at him and began to squeeze his jaw. He lifted up Donasek and threw him down to the ground before lying down and kicking him in the chin. Donasek was at a loss for words. What was this kid? Where did all this power come from? He couldn't tell. He could tell he was a reincarnated devil from the wings, but that still didn't explain why he was so strong. He wasn't even using the sacred gear either. Donasek attempted to get up and get back into fighting position, but Issei was too quick for him. He pinned the man right back down as soon as he got up and pummeled him into the ground. He stomped on his throat and grabbed him by the head. They were bleeding through the mouth, but Issei refused to let off. He beat their face into the pavement over and over again. Issei laughed while doing this. Die, you stupid burnt turkey! Issei yelled, sounding like a madman. He only stopped when he started coughing up blood himself. In a moment he had been pumped up with adrenaline, allowing him to forget about his injuries, but now the adrenaline was starting to wear away and the pain was swelling up again. He kneeled down and clutched his body in pain. He looked over to Donasek in anger, but the man was already knocked out unconscious. He fell unconscious himself not too long after. Then he woke up once again in his bed. Another nightmare? There was something off though. He felt some more movement in his bed and a head of red hair popped up from the covers. Bright green eyes greeted him. He couldn't believe it. This was what was on his mind for pretty much the whole day. She even ate breakfast with him and his parents didn't act like anything was off about what happened back there in his room. He tried filling in the gaps of his memory in order to figure out the correlation between what happened during the day and how that whole thing with Rias happened. At the end of school, Yuto Kiba, the night of this school that most of the girls stubbed him by, ended up approaching him and invited him to the cult research club. He and Kiba never really talked before, even when Issei was making a name for himself at the school. They usually just kept their distance from each other, never bothering to slide in each other's lanes, so this was new to Issei. When he was brought to the club, Rias was waiting for him. She informed Issei of the fact he was now a devil and part of her peerage. He had a sacred gear, and a couple of stray fallen angels were trying to put an end to him since they saw him as a potential threat, and seeing how he was able to beat down one of those fallen angels so badly, she couldn't completely blame them. He had a lot of potential and she admired that. He would be an interesting inclusion in her peerage. Everyone standing before him were also devils and part of her peerage, making them his teammates. Of course, Rias also mentioned that there were three factions being heaven, the fallen angels, and the devils which he was a part of. He was a pawn, and as a new devil, she required him to go out and hand out flyers for summonings. He had to spread them around and get some contracts in order to increase his power. He wasn't able to get a hang of the magic circles as of yet, but something almost everyone was surprised about was how easily he was able to pick up flying. It was as if it was second nature to him. The only person that wasn't shocked was Rias, although she'd seen him fly and fight Donasek before. She knew the boy was strong and talented, but never to such a degree. Sure, humans would get a power boost after being reincarnated into any of the three factions, but usually they wouldn't be able to throw hands with any long time running fallen angels or devils. Even the ones on the lower end of the spectrum wouldn't lose so miserably to a new devil. Even with all of this potential Issei held, he was still unable to get a contract. Now, you guys voted for Asuya to still be in Rias's peerage, but not with Issei, so that whole interaction between the two never happens here. Instead, I'll be replacing Issei with Kiba here because he deserves some love too. I mean, come on already. The last thing Issei ended up experiencing for the time though was witnessing his first stray devil hunt. It was thrilling. He even ended up joining which surprised the senior members, especially when he was able to almost single-handedly take the stray down. Issei was quite brutal in the way he took her down too. Akano giggled while seeing this. Kiba looked at Akano and took a step back from her. He was used to her more sadistic ways, but it appeared that someone else would be joining her train. That thought terrified Kiba. When Issei was done fighting the stray, he looked back at the rest of his teammates and raised an eyebrow in confusion, seeing how some were just gawking. "What's the matter?" Issei questioned. Konako only said nothing before walking away. The same for the rest of the peerage, but they complimented Issei on how he was able to take down a stray well. The next time Issei would fight someone would be when he was summoned once again. There was something different here though. He saw a dead body on the floor and he recognized them. He froze in shock. A person with silver hair came charging at him with a sword, and he had the look of a madman on his face. Issei noticed this though and quickly moved out of the way. He trumped the man and grabbed him by the hair. He lifted him up and threw them aside like a rag doll. He failed to acknowledge the fact he had another weapon in hand though, a firearm to be more exact. This was the second time Issei had ever activated his sacred gear here, and that was out of pure disdain for the man in front of him. Fried tried shooting at Issei, but most of the bullets missed him. A couple managed to hit him though, which made him want to scream in pain, but he covered his mouth with his arm instead. The arm that was wielding his sacred gear at the moment. Fried picked himself up and tried stabbing Issei while he was trying to get himself back together. Asuya distracted him though as she gasped with what she was witnessing. Fried tried explaining that this was all part of the business. This boy was a devil and therefore he needed to be exorcised. Issei chewed the man out because he killed an innocent man, so who was the real devil here? "Oh, don't give me any of your back talk, devil. He summoned you and therefore he was just as bad as any devil and needed to be treated accordingly," Fried snapped. He was about to shoot Issei once again, but Asuya got in his way. Get out of the way, Asuya. You shouldn't interfere with my work. After all, the fallen angels wouldn't be too pleased about this. As soon as Issei heard the fallen angels being mentioned, he grew more annoyed because these guys were constantly interfering in his life and he was getting sick of it. He didn't hate the blonde girl wearing a sort of nun outfit, but this nutjob over there, he absolutely despised. Him and the fallen angels as well. They were like roaches to him. No matter how hard he tried, they always seemed to come back. Issei moved Issei aside as he didn't want her getting hurt unnecessarily. All he was focused on attacking right now was this psycho priest with a sword and gun. His eyes glowed red once again and the horns began to form. The only difference here was that he had his sacred gear activated and he didn't have his wings out. He was originally bleeding, but those wounds, albeit still open, weren't necessarily leaking any blood anymore. Nice. He got ready to punch Frieza square in the jaw, but a red magical portal opened up and the first one to come out turned out to be Kiba. He thrusted his sword towards Frieza, but he blocked it with his own weapon. He couldn't keep up once the rest of the peers appeared to back up Kiba and Issei. A portal was opened up, transporting Frieza away. Right when they were about to teleport away, Kiba looked over to see Issei. They made eye contact for a couple of seconds before he turned away, looking down. Issei called out his name, but it was too late as they disappeared. Kiba felt bad for having to leave Issei like that, but they lived in two different worlds. She was an association with the fallen angels, and he was a devil. He didn't want to leave her like that, but he had no choice. He did encounter her the next day though, and they learned more about each other. While he did admit to being a devil, it didn't necessarily mean he was bad or anything. Issei explained the reason why she was allied with the fallen angels, mainly being because of the fact she didn't have much of a choice. She healed the devil, and because of this, she was casted out of the church. They had to depart ways though when Rainer appeared. He was confident that he could defeat her, but he wasn't sure about the rest of the fallen angels that were in cahoots with her. He doubted that she came alone. He had to begrudgingly leave Issei in the fallen angels' hands again, but he promised that things would be different the next time they met. Although Rias and Nakano didn't show much of an interest in saving Issei from Rainer's clutches, Konako and Issei were a different case. They genuinely wanted to help him rescue Issei. Issei especially, considering his last interaction with the girl. She actually tried protecting him despite being aware of his devil status. That warmed his heart a little. They made their way into the fallen angels' territory and snuck in. Although they had to face the psychotic priest again, Issei went ahead of the two and shot a devastating kick to his hip, shattering the man's hip bone. He was caught off guard last time and wasn't prepared for those holy bullets, but not again. He knocked out Frieza after bashing his face into the wall a couple of times. Issei, Konako, and Kiba all went through Rainer's forces much faster than ever before. Unfortunately, they were still unable to make it in time to stop Rainer from extracting Issei's sacred gear. They saw her lifeless eyes and looked at Rainer, who was laughing at their despair. Kiba gripped his sword in anger. Issei screamed in rage as well. He emitted a powerful aura as the sacred gear transformed from its twice critical state to a more draconic form. This wasn't the only change though, as plates of white armor formed around Issei's body and his horns grew out once again, but they were longer this time. They looked more like bull horns this time around. His white armor covered his chest, shoulders, ankles, and wrists. The armor wasn't completely white either. It had some purple plates to it, but for some reason it felt incomplete. Not like Rainer would be able to notice though, as all she could see would be two powerful devils charging at her. Issei's sacred gear switched from red and yellow with green gems to white and purple. He could hear the sacred gear yelling a boost. Kiba beat Issei to the punch though as he swung his blade at Rainer, cutting her arm. Issei headbutted her, but he didn't realize he had horns now. Longer horns that rammed through her abdomen. She coughed up blood. A blunt attack from Kiba, and she was starting to see red. She tried healing herself, but they weren't giving her any breathing room. At this point, she was being beaten down by the two over and over again, like a certain hated character from a certain other anime that killed off a precious person. I'll put up a picture for you guys to witness the gloriousness of the moment. Rainer Rainer. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, to be honest. But yeah, she tried reverting back to her Yuma form in order to try and trick Issei into protecting her, to stop beating her down and give her time to escape, potentially kill him when he least expected it. But he smiled wickedly at her before lifting up his right hand. His left grabbed the right arm and was meant to be a sort of support as I began to charge up an energy attack. It was a purple and red energy sphere that shot at Rainer, obliterating her from existence. He had yelled "Death Cannon" while doing this move. When Rias and Akuno arrived, they were able to comfort the boys by explaining how there was a chance Asuya could be revived. She held out her bishop chess piece and asked for one of the boys to bring Asuya's body over to her. Kiba immediately ran over and grabbed the body. He brought her towards Rias with tears in his eyes. He wanted her to live as he didn't believe she did anything wrong. She only got caught up in the wrong crowd and not by choice either. He was glad to know his master shared the same sentiments. Rias kneeled down and put the rings back on Asuya's fingers. After that, she went through the whole revival process for Asuya, allowing the girl to have a second chance at life, albeit as a devil and a bishop for the Grummery household. Kiba was overjoyed at seeing Asuya alive once again and even hugged her, something he didn't make a habit of doing often, but he knew how it felt to be alone in the world. He'd experienced so much in his early childhood, and seeing Asuya just reminded him of all of his hardships in life, something he didn't want anyone else going through, which was part of the reason why he seemed to grow an attachment to Asuya, and especially so soon. Now, I'll be honest, not too many changes happen here. Well, afterwards anyways. Not drastically, besides Asuya staying with Kiba instead of Issei here, and Kiba being more protective of Asuya than Issei when Saji tries to make moves with her. The only major change here is when Rias asks Issei to do her one teensy weensy favor. Issei does ruin Rias here. How, you may ask? Moving on. All you need to know is that Grafia does catch them in the action, but it's already too late for her to stop them. She would end up reporting the news to Sir's ex, who, while disappointed in Rias for taking such actions, couldn't really do anything about it and told Riser that his fiancée was tainted. If he still wanted to continue and get married to her, then he could go right ahead, honestly. Riser was furious and demanded to know who could have defiled his future wife. Sir Zex sighed and explained that she decided to embrace her pawn. His name was Issei Hayod. He was his name was Issei, and he showed a picture of the boy. Riser wanted to have a rating game in order to end this boy's life. They'd see it as a sort of accident anyways. He would still marry Rias, but only because of her status, and it would mean more fully blooded devils, but he would now have to live with the fact he wasn't her first. Yeah. Anyways, like that's pretty much all I got for this video. King Titan X out. Just remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And your boy is out. Oh yeah, one more thing before I go. I actually forgot to mention this in the beginning, but like there's like two things. Basically, simply put, like the first image you see is like an edit for how Issei will look in this what if, made by my friend Gratify What Ifs. Go check out his channel, by the way, and make sure that he uploads. And this other one is basically how Issei's body looks. This was made by Arcfield on DeviantArt. Like I ended up finding this on Google. I just wanted to give credit to the person who originally made this. I didn't want to just steal art, you know. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. Peace.